Hello and welcome to Makers.dev, episode number 77. Chris, did you know that 77 is the sum of 3 consecutive squares?
Nope. Cool.
For bonus points, in 5 seconds, can you name those squares?
Oh, no. It would have to be like 16, 25, and 36.
Oh my god! Yes!
All
That's
right.
exactly right. It's 4 squared, 5 squared, and 6 squared. I would not have been able to do that. That was really impressive.
Well, it's consecutive, so it has to be, you got to divide it by 3, and then that's about the middle square, so that's how I did that.
That's pretty good. Well done. I was trying to pressure you for comedic effect, but I wasn't expecting you to actually get it. Cool. How you doing? What's up?
I'm doing all right. Like my whole family is basically sick. I have mostly avoided it. But yeah, we've gotten COVID tested, flu tested, and strep tested. Different ones of us, and it's none of that. So it's just some virus which presents itself differently in all of us, I guess. So whatever, it is what it is.
My sister's family is also sick with their 10-month-old son Jack, and then I had a day this last week where I slept for 12 hours unprompted. Maybe it's COVID 2 or something. COVID
Evades
2022.
all tests. Yeah.
I hope not.
Yeah. But otherwise, doing all right.
Cool. What did you get up to this last week? What are you thinking about?
Let's see. I had some little things first. Let's see. I almost bought a 3D printer. Like I was.
I love it.
I did not though.
No.
But I know. I saw someone posted STL files for an adapter which fits onto the camera that I have and goes to a microscope lens, a microscope objective, I guess it's called, the lower lens, which means you can turn your camera into a very neat microscope. And they posted some really cool photos that they got, and I wanted to take some photos like that myself, but I did not do that. So, but yeah, maybe in the future I will 3D print a thing for my camera. I also have other old lenses which don't have adapters for them, and then I could 3D print adapters for them, like really old, like large format lenses, which are just like neat. They're relatively inexpensive compared to other lenses, and they produce some cool effects. Yeah, so maybe in the future I will 3D print some adapters.
That sounds sweet, and it doesn't. This to me is the first step towards buying one. Once you get this critical mass of like, well, if I had a 3D printer, I could get this thing, which is of roughly this value to me, and a 3D printer costs $300. So once you get, $150 of value of things that you could print as soon as you get the printer, I think that's how it works. And I feel like you went through a similar process with your GPU. Like once you were at a stage where you were doing enough ML stuff that it made sense to flip from trying to minimize the amount of GPU you were using when you were paying for it per hour on Google Colab to trying to maximize how much you were using it. Like it's about building up that critical threshold. So I'm glad that you have one thing that's on your list of things that you would immediately print once you got a 3D printer. They are so much fun. You would have so much fun with it.
Yeah, I suspect so. So about the GPU, by the way, because crypto is crashing, GPU prices are back to MSRP. So
yeah.
That's interesting. But now I'm looking at even more expensive GPUs, like the next level up. I've basically been saturating my current one, and so we'll see. Well, they're a lot more expensive though.
What's the next level up? How much more expensive?
The GPUs are like $6,000 each. The ones that I'm looking at,
$6,000,
and I want 2 of them.
Wow.
And then I would need a computer that could power those as well.
I'm not as good at
that's
you
like
but I'm pretty sure that's $12,000 on GPU
plus the computer.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so that's not something I could just like plop down. That's like I got to get a contract and a business expense like just for that kind of money. So we'll see. It is though, if I run it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a whole year, then or for six months and I pay it back. So because it costs like $3 an hour to rent.
Okay.
So,
that's in the realm of feasibility that like you would get a contracting job that you would need that much power for that would pay that much or more.
Yes, it is.
Are you looking for those sorts of jobs? Is there a job board for
not
ML
especially,
stuff?
although 2 recently have sort of come my way, and one I said I was overbooked on because I am doing too many things, and then the other one we're sort of still talking, so we'll see.
Okay.
Maybe I'll get a contracting job just to pay for the GPU. Yeah.
Cool.
Which I'm doing a lot of things. I'm also currently enrolled in a master's class for the summer too. So but I might drop it. If I drop it the next 2 days, I get a refund. And it's the summer, so I might take the summer off because I'm doing a lot. So we'll see.
If a listener of makers.dev knows of anyone who would pay tens of thousands of dollars to have a ML problem solved, we got your guy right here.
That's right. I also accept payment in A6000s, which is the GPU I want. Yeah.
I just watched an episode of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel with Sarah last night, and there's a scene where they go to a voiceover job, and she's acting as a voiceover artist and says something like, the syrup is so flavorful and creamy, and then they're like, that was great, well done, and then they ask for the check, and they're like, oh, didn't you read the contract of how payment works? And they walk out with 2 huge crates of the syrup that's this flavorful syrup, and you would be really happy with that sort of situation being paid
That's
in the thing you're working on. I wanted to say also, we both have been cutting our hair since the beginning of COVID, and there's a device that I think we talked about of it's called a Flowbee, where you connect it to a vacuum cleaner and you stick a pair of scissors in it, or a like an automatic buzzer, I forget what they're called, and you just run it over your head and it cleans up as it's cutting your hair to whatever the predefined set length is. That's another thing that you could 3D print. Add that to the pile. That's got to be worth like $50. I think Flowbees, if you buy them on eBay, are like $100 or something, because they stopped making them in the 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Yes, I have been cutting my hair since COVID, and it all goes in the sink right now. Well, and then I try to fish it out because otherwise it clogs up the sink. But yeah.
Cool. What else did you get up to? Kaggle's always a thing. How's Kaggle going?
Yeah, so I think last week I was like, we're basically definitely going to get gold in this competition, and we were like 7th place or something at the time.
Yeah.
Now we've been knocked down to like 15th. We're out of the gold range currently.
Oof.
So I spoke too soon. So I've been working on that one. It's the last 2 weeks for that competition, and so many people have moved up so fast, and some 2 of the people have moved up like quite a bit further than we thought was like possible even. And so now we're all thinking there has to be a leak, or there has to be something that like all these teams sort of found at once, and so now we're trying to find that thing. And so yeah, we were feeling pretty good, and now we're not. So yeah, been working on that. And I was working on the GPS competition a little too. I was in like 20th place, and then someone came out with a public notebook that beat me, and as soon as that happens, like a whole bunch of people come behind, and so I got knocked down to like 100th place or something.
Oof.
And so I did a little bit of work to get back up to 20th place. And so I'm still in 20th on that one. That one is longer timeline though. This patent one ends in 2 weeks, and so we're really trying to figure this one out. So
what a diss to release a public notebook that beats your score.
No, well, there's still so there's still like 2 months in the competition, so this is it's totally allowed. Well, I mean, it's always allowed to release public notebooks, but when people really get angry is when someone releases a high scoring notebook in like the last week of a competition, because then a whole bunch of people just come along and copy it.
Yeah,
and what it really does is it means there's like way less interesting solutions in the top, and like everyone is basically a variant of the same solution, and that's actually a worse outcome usually, especially for the people running the competition, because what they want is lots of different ideas that all score pretty high. If you get one idea that like scores really really high and everyone basically copies that idea, then all they get is like that one model, when really what they want is sort of a variety of models to choose from. So yeah, so doing high scoring notebooks in the later stages of the competition is when it's really bad, but early in the competition it's fine usually.
I had 2 other questions on that. The patent competition, where you just got knocked out of the top ranking, could that be overfitting? I know that was a thing that I think you were dealing with. And then on the private leaderboard, you're actually doing much better.
Yes, certainly possible. So we could be in the gold range still in the private leaderboard, and we won't know for 2 more weeks. You can usually get a sense for that a little bit by if there are people in the top that have a lot of submissions. You can see like how many submissions they have. If they have a lot of submissions, then there's more of a chance they're overfitting to the public leaderboard, because that usually means they've been using the public leaderboard to like choose which models they're picking. And then if you see people in the top with very few public submissions, that usually means they're doing a really good job, because that means they have some some CV like method that's like that's good, validation, cross validation method, which is preventing that overfitting. So what's concerning is that a few of the people we saw jump really high have very few public submissions, which means they've figured out cross-validation or have stumbled on a data leak, which is also not good. So, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Second question, also tying into the potential of like finding a way to be able to pay for your expensive GPUs.
Yeah.
What happens from the company's perspective after one of these competitions? And so you have the competition, and we have this new way of, we have 6 novel techniques of getting more accurate GPS data. Do they have their own internal team that then takes that and combines it into one good algorithm, or is that a service offered by Kaggle? Is that something that you could do as consulting that you could offer to these people? Like, hey, I understand this. I was one of the participants. I can combine all these for you and package it up for this amount of money.
Yeah, it actually depends a lot on the competition. So some competitions, the company has internal teams. Yeah, so they'll take the winning submissions and they'll sort of internally figure out which ones they want to use.
Okay.
Sometimes the outcome is just that the project is open sourced, or the final submissions are open sourced. That's, so some companies. So right now, for example, Foursquare is hosting a competition, and they already have what they consider to be the world's best location matching thing, which is what they're trying to find, which is basically like if you get descriptions of 2 different locations, are they the same thing or not? So like if you get, Starbucks at this address, is that the same as Starbucks at, Starbucks coffee shop at this address? That kind of thing. So all they're doing with the competition, they say, is open sourcing it and then getting people like used to this data set and stuff. And they're probably trying to use it a little bit more for recruiting, actually, or like sort of like PR. And then another competition, which is happening now, which is the American Express competition, is explicitly using it for recruiting. So they say, one, you can submit your resumes to us. So they say that directly. And then they also say that anyone who gets in the top, I don't remember what they said, but you'll have a chance, it sounds like, basically to get hired by American Express in order to implement your solution inside of them. So some companies explicitly say that's what they want to do. So yeah, it depends a lot on the competition.
That's very interesting. It sounds like, I think I had a different idea of what Kaggle was. I think I had a conception that it was like, if I'm a company and I have a data science problem that is going to be able to be solved well with ML, Kaggle is like a way that I can. Kaggle's like a Fiverr or like a 99 Designs, but for the algorithm. And then once I get it, I can just plug and play that into the thing that I'm doing. It sounds like that's not the case. That it's more publicity, or it's more the closest that it comes to actually solving the problem is recruiting. That then you'll hire the people who made the solutions. Does that sound right?
It can be the case. So, for example, the bird song competition, like they've taken models directly. They're a nonprofit, and so they don't have a lot of resources. So they've taken models directly from the winning Kaggle solutions and implemented them. But then other companies, usually companies with more money, so like the NFL ran one for player safety, or they've run several, and they basically hired one of the top 3 people who won their competition as a contractor to implement it inside of them. And then other companies already have data teams. So yeah, it varies wildly.
Okay. Interesting. It'd be cool if this stuff was plug and play enough and data standardized enough that you could just say, like, here's my standard data set, and I'm trying to answer this problem, and this is the input, and I'm desiring this output. I'll pay for the best score that can match the function. I'll pay for the lowest. What's it called? Cost function? Is that right?
Cost, objective, loss. One of those.
Loss
words.
is the one I was going for. Yeah. And then similar to 99 Designs, I just get a big old list of loss functions, and I can run that against my private data set to see what's, to filter out people who are overfitting.
It can be a little like that, but there's several problems. One is that people do weird things for Kaggle competitions in order to win them. Like usually the winning solution is like an ensemble of many, many models, when really in production what you want is like one well-explained model. And so even if it performs a little bit worse, it's like easier to do, cheaper to run, easier to change, all this stuff. And then the other thing is when your data changes, so it's called domain shift, like say over time your data changes slightly, then your model actually gets worse and worse. And so you have to retrain it, and you have to like watch for this domain shift and stuff, or this, ongoing change of your data. And so like you can't just run a competition once and plug it in. You have to run a competition and then constantly monitor and update that model. So you still need people who understand what the model's doing to make it viable for business.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. It's like code golf. You wouldn't post on a code golf website like, write this code for me, because the things that win on code golf are these incredibly obfuscated, very condensed things that are maximizing the score of the fewest number of characters possible to get the bigger objective. But in an actual business context, you have other objectives other than just a minimize loss function. You're playing this game over a long scale, so it's not just this one data set. It's can we manage drift? Okay, that makes sense. What a fun area. I like this. Do you have any updates on the Slack app?
I worked a little on that. So we had limited co-working time last week, but I spent some of it on the Slack app that I'm working on, and I got it almost to the point where I can resubmit it. There are 2 difficult things left to do. I did all the easy stuff. So now one of them is verification that the API calls that Slack are sending are actually coming from Slack. So that involves checking headers and exchanging secrets and all this stuff, which is always kind of a big pain. Like, they have a pretty nice tutorial to go through it, but it's like, many pages long, and it's the kind of work I really don't like. But that is one of the things I have to do. And then something else, which I can't remember now, but yeah, then I'll be able to resubmit. So
sweet. Close. Marching closer every day. I'm excited.
Yep.
I think we've talked about this before, but marketing after it's ready in the Slack App Store, I know you might merely get a bump just by having it be public in the Slack App Store. What's the plan to get people to use this?
Good question. Right now, it's just get it in the Slack App Store and then see how much traffic that drives.
Okay.
I have lots of things that I would like to do after that, but yeah, right now I'm focused on the Kaggle stuff and my masters, which I may end up dropping the class in the next 2 days, right? So that's what I've been doing recently. Yeah.
Okay. Reasonable. I'll take it. Yeah, because like for a Slack app, like the marketplace, I think is going to be a big driver of traffic. So yeah, I think see what happens after it's published. And how great would it be if like you just merely having it published and like playing the much easier to game SEO game within the App Store got you a steady stream of customers? That'd be really cool.
That'd be awesome. Probably not going to happen, but we'll see.
Well, it's nice to dream.
That's right.
I'll be open for you. You mentioned the class that you might be dropping. I think that's Advanced Operating Systems.
Yes, Advanced Operating Systems. Sorry, one second. I'm going to turn on my air conditioning because it is very hot in my room. Advanced Operating Systems, which is not really on my machine learning like AI track, but I took it because it's programming heavy, and I like the programming classes better than some of the theory classes that they have to offer. So like I have to take 10 classes in the program. So I was trying to decide, like, even though it's not ML specific, it's still very interesting. It's mostly like C programming. So I think the class would be okay. It's just I have a lot going on this summer. And so do I want to add a bunch of C programming on top of it? I don't know.
Operating systems, I remember from my undergraduate. It was just an undergraduate class. It wasn't. I'm sure in this class they'd be going much more in depth with things. But of any class I took in my undergrad, I slacked off the most in that class. I'm usually a great student. I'm usually like, sitting in like the middle and the center, not quite in the front, but like 2 rows back. And I'm prepared and I know what's going on and I can answer the questions. And in that class, for whatever reason, I just didn't care at all. So I would get to class and just like check my email the entire class. There was this one moment that's just seared into my brain that's come up in multiple nightmares about like, when you have school nightmares that are like, there was a test for a class that you didn't even realize you were signed up for. It pulls me back to this moment of he like pointed to me in the back, clearly not paying attention. I'm in the very back row. And he's like, Christian, what do you think about that? And I was like, well, I had no idea what he just asked. And I wish I had said like, I'm so sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Can you repeat the question? And I didn't, and I tried to bluff my way through it. Of course he knew, and everyone knew. And I tried to play it off, and I did not. And he was like, I just went off of like what was on the board. I tried to just talk about what was on there vaguely, and he was like, no, that's exactly what I just said is the obvious wrong answer. And I was like, oh yes, of course. Man, it was bad. I've got some PTSD from my operating systems class, so I hope your class is better than that if you decide to take it.
Oh man. This is funny because operating systems is one of the classes that I slacked off in college too. Actually, we had group projects for the whole thing, and like the whole thing was built on this one group project. And one of the people in my project was like really excited about it, and he always had it done before we got to the group meetings. And so I was like, okay. All right. Like we had group meetings every week, and he was like, oh yeah, I did that already. And so so I ended up being the guy, or everyone except for him in the group was like did nothing. So as a result, I didn't learn it as well as I should have, so this was kind of a second chance to relearn some of the stuff I didn't learn, which is one of the reasons I was going to take it. Yeah, that's funny.
The only thing I remember from that class is round robin queuing and forks. It was a big deal. We talked about that a lot, and it was all in C, so I've never used it. But I guess the concept of it is sort of interesting. The idea that like CPUs can run around and push forward multiple jobs at once. That's a cool idea. Cool. Oh, on that topic, I watched a few YouTube videos this last week on Rust because one of the founders of a big YouTube channel, Crash Course, I forgot his name, published a video like promoting Rust as a language, and that was surprising to me. So I watched a few videos about it, but it seems like it's like a high-level language that's still as type-safe and fast as C, and that seems interesting. Do you know anything about Rust?
Yeah, so in my parallel systems class, we did one of the projects in Rust.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
If you're going to do stuff in C or C++, then Rust is really great because, you have low-level access. You can still do unsafe things if you really want to, but it also, is type-safe because of the way it, now I'm starting to forget, but because of the way things handle data. So a function that creates data always has control of that data. I don't even remember anymore, but it was a bit of a paradigm shift in my head because we had just been doing C++, and then this Rust thing comes and you have to like do weird things, especially with async code, which is what we were doing, which is one of the harder things in Rust to do. But if you want to do like C or C++, I would definitely look at Rust. If you're not doing C or C++ type work, then you probably don't need it. So
cool. I'd like to play with it. I don't think I'm touching the use case for it of like, you need this low-level function to be faster, because everything I'm doing is on the scale of like hundreds of milliseconds. Like it doesn't matter.
Right.
But I think it'd be fun to stretch my brain in that way. I used to love learning new languages. I remember in college I was just like, Ruby and Scala, and there were some fun ones. Cool. I have 3 things I would like to talk about. I'd like to talk about personal life, and then FileInbox, and then 2 things I'd like your hot take on.
All right.
So first, on the personal productivity, I am talking to you now from the first office I've ever had that's not also the place where I sleep. And that feels really cool. Moving in with Sarah came with this huge perk of like, I get my own office in this condo. And that feels really cool. Like having a separate place to work means I can have like all my project stuff here, and it's this code switching of like, if I'm in this room, I'm only doing work, and then if I'm in this other room, I'm eating, and if I'm in this other room, I'm sleeping. I think I discounted the benefit of having a completely separate space, and that feels really good. But part of the consequence of that is like a lot of this last week was spent moving stuff around still, and unpacking stuff and putting stuff away, and just getting more settled. But I think it's important not to discount the importance of that. If I'm like if there's a low level problem going on, if like my stuff isn't organized, I think that's always the best layer to be focusing effort, as opposed to trying to stumble through the higher level effort. So did a lot of work in that. And also along those lines, I have some travel coming up. I'm going to Santorini with Sarah next week, so work stuff is going to get disrupted again, which I feel a little frustrated about. But I'd like to still be getting some stuff done, because I know if I'm traveling and only doing fun stuff, I'd start to feel listless. So I'd like to it would also maximize my enjoyment of the trip if I'm also getting some stuff done. And then I'll be in Boston, but in Boston I'll be able to be working still. So yeah, we have 2 more disruptive things coming up, but then after that I will just be cruising. I'm excited for like my physical situation to get boring and know that I'll be in the same place. So that's that. Next thing is FileInbox. I pushed forward a lot of it with you this week on co-working, even though we only worked this last week for 5 hours and 25 minutes, which I was looking at that feels really low based on what we usually do if it's 2 hours a day. But I'd forgotten that there were several days that we didn't do co-working, and then I remembered, oh yeah, on the days when we didn't do co-working, I just fell apart. I just flitted off into space thinking about other stuff, and with this intention of I'll just watch this one YouTube video and then get back to FileInbox, and I did not. So I feel like I've really locked in. This is a very important thing in my life to be able to do co-working with you. This has solved a huge problem, and I was reminded of the value of it by not having it. So co-working is very important. I finished the upload notification emails. That feels really good, and it's done in this really solid way, where I wrote tests for the thing that generates the email, and then the actual email part that gets sent to the user is in this flexible thing that if I wanted to change the verbiage or add something to it, I could do that very easily. I think on that, I'd love to get your take on test-driven development. I was reminded this last week how fun it is for me to do TDD. I had a lot of resistance to it at first because I had this mentality of everything has to be TDD, and it just felt like this weight. But in specific contexts of pure functions, if there's a complicated function that has a defined input and a defined output, TDD has become my favorite way of writing those sorts of functions. It's this fun adversarial game with myself of it's like writing contracts with mythological demons, where you have to word what you want very precisely. So I'll say something okay, for this function with this email, the subject of the email based on the data should be new file from Christian Jenko, and then I'll switch modes to being the demon who's trying to follow the rules and pass the test, and I'll be return the literal string new file from Christian Jenko, and then I'll switch back to the test writing mode and be okay, well, let's do another test then with a different thing. Yes, you passed my test, but that's not actually what I was wanting. And I find it really fun, and I had an experience today where I was doing some refactoring and was able to do so really confidently because I knew, even though I was doing some major changes and totally switching up where logic was with things, as long as my tests passed, I've done it successfully, and I don't even have to think about all the edge cases that past me has already thought about because they're already passing. That was a lot of words without letting you talk. The question I'd like to ask you is just TDD, how do you feel about it? Do you have a similar experience?
Yeah, so I think I may have said this on this podcast before, but generally, I don't like tests, and yeah, and not philosophically or anything. I just don't like writing them. I think they're I think they're great when you're on a team and you're trying to make sure that people don't break the build, because you're not touching everything. But my favorite way of coding is favorite mostly impractical way of coding is by myself, super fast, and tests are not conducive to that. However, I still recognize their value. One of the places I wrote the most tests ever in my life was for this very particularly super dense business heavy logic for these business rules that were happening. This is back when I was doing real-time location with RFID tags, and we were getting all this data, and all this data had to make it a very certain way into a very certain report for the government. Government reports have to be have to be right, and they have to be a certain way. And it was also extremely easy to mess up, but everything looked right. So the report still rendered and the numbers looked sort of right, but they were wrong. So we wrote lots and lots of tests for that, and that was very good because we could actually show that we were doing the reports the right way. For other tests, I will write them if I am forced to. Otherwise, I don't like doing them. Yeah, which is that's not an opinion I hold very strongly. Like I recognize the value of tests. I just don't like writing them. So that's how I feel about it.
I totally hear you that it makes the most sense on teams, especially, if I was on a team with junior developers who I didn't like very much, I would write tests to be like, stop messing with my code. Like,
That's
stop
not what I mean,
breaking
but
stuff.
okay.
Oh. What do you mean?
I just mean, like, on a team, you're writing, like, everyone, say, in their own little modules or whatever, and the modules interact together.
Yes.
And so you don't always know, for example, if you do something in yours, that if it breaks someone else's module, because you're not always testing for that.
Yes,
Like, you're usually testing your own code and it works fine, but then when it interacts with this other thing, it breaks it, and you just weren't checking for that because you're not in that every day. So what automated tests do, especially on teams, is make sure the interactions between different people's code work. It's not that you don't like them or don't trust them or anything. It's just you're not thinking about that use case. Yeah.
I haven't worked very much on. I guess the last coding team I worked on was like in college on group projects, and it went badly. I ended up getting in the first semester we were on a team. I was such a little asshole. They had like a group report at the end of it where each individual person was supposed to write like, what did you think of working on this team? And I had taught myself Ruby on Rails, and the group project was a web app. So like I was the person who was coming to the meeting every week. Like, well, I already did it, so that doesn't matter. Yeah. And I got sort of annoyed because like we had just taken a databases class, and so one of the other people on the team, I'm not going to say this person's name, was making recommendations that just didn't make sense at all to me, like splitting up the user record for no reason into two arbitrary subrecords, and I was like, no, like maybe based on this one thing that he said in this one lecture this one time, but that's just not how you actually do it based on these Rails tutorials that I've read and watched, and Ryan Base's Railcast. So I in the report at the end of the semester, I was like, I really learned a lot about working with people who in terms as harsh as this, I think I worded it something like working with people who like don't know as much as me, and like not getting frustrated when they try to make stupid recommendations. And then what do you know it, at the beginning of the next semester they were like, hey Christian, you're actually on your own team this semester. And I was like, fantastic. didn't really think anything of it, but it's probably because I was really mean and didn't work well on teams. That's why I have the career I do today. Anyway. Yes. So testing. The thought came to mind of your much healthier motivation for having testing on teams. It's sort of like you have built your own little avatar to like defend your code, even if you're not there. Yeah. So when I'm on my computer making my tests and I'm like, is this cool with everybody? You have your little representative there that's like, no, that's not cool with me because I was depending on you to do this thing in this circumstance, and that's not okay. So you need to talk to the real Chris because Avatar Chris is saying that this isn't good. Or you can just deal with me, and then we're good to go. That's a cool image. Cool. That's TDD. Oh, this came up again because I had two really spooky things happen with my security rules in Firebase. For anyone who doesn't know, like the benefit of Firebase is that you don't have to think about your backend. It's very highly abstracted. Google scales it for you. You have very few interactions with the actual backend as a backend. But one of the things that you have to interact and be very, very careful with when dealing with Firebase is the security rules, which say like these are the circumstances in which people can access every type of data at each place. So that's like, things, if anyone can upload a file, but only the owner of the page can download the file. And I realized horrifyingly last week that I had a bug in that code that let anyone view all of the responses for a page. This hasn't shipped yet. This didn't affect anyone, but I was horrified. And so I fix that real quick. And then I saved it and I was like, phew, okay, well that bullet dodged. And then again today, I noticed that the fix that I did made it so that no one except me could access any of the pages. Like I had written it in such a way that only the administrator, who was me, there was only one administrator in the whole database, would be able to access this. So that's bad. So coming off of this TDD stuff in writing the emails, I And now I'm very motivated to really lock down. Like, it's going to take 10 times longer than it did to write the rules, to write all the tests for it. But man, it's going to give me such peace of mind. And then in the future, if there's ever any bug or there's ever any change I want to make, by just adding on to the tests first and playing this adversarial game, I'm just going to feel rock solid confident in like making big refactoring changes or something. But man, it was spooky, and I feel very motivated in this circumstance to invest more into writing the tests.
Yeah. So even with my dislike for tests, this is like the perfect application of tests, because it's we'll call security a module. Like it's a high impact module, like a very important thing that you don't think about very often, that you could probably easily break if you like copy and paste your thing and forget the rule or whatever. That will meaningfully affect your business if it went wrong. And so all those things. Oh, and also it doesn't change like very often. Like you always want the rule to be the same, and so you write the test once and it should be like that always. It's not like the tests that I used to hate the most are like integration tests where it expected a certain string to be on the web page when it rendered. And like it's like if we want to change the wording a little bit, then all of our tests break, and then we got it like that always felt wrong to me. But security rules should change very rarely or whatever and need to be enforced. And so that's the perfect application for unit tests, I think.
Cool. I feel validated. I had the thought also when you were describing teams, like it you don't feel like it makes sense for you if it's code base that only you're going to touch to write tests. I have felt like in projects where I've invested in TDD, I have felt like I'm on a team of me and myself from the past that like it's sort of like that Avatar thing, but it's an advocate of me when I was trying to write the code originally, which makes things like refactoring much easier.
My view is a little more nuanced than that. It's I don't care because I don't like them so much.
Okay.
Like I recognize that that future me would have an easier time if I wrote tests, but present me really doesn't want to write them, so I don't.
That's fair.
Yeah.
The biggest hurdle for me is just in setting up the environment for testing. Like, once the environment's set up, I feel like it flows easily, and I get into a rhythm, and I have my little monitor set up of like on my monitor where I would usually have the output from the HTML where it's in a web browser. I have instead the live rendering tests, and then I hit save on my code, and then I look over and it's instantly refreshed. But getting to that point, like I think the last time I did it took me like 2 or 3 days. But then once I've done it in a particular environment with the particular setup of whatever the thing is, and now that I'm standardizing things sort of like in this React Next Firebase place, it's getting easier and easier. But it's still a slog every time to get to the point where I can write a test with the data that I need to have access to and be able to change things in the right way. And that's the part I really don't like. That's the friction. If I had easier ways to write tests for all of my code, I think I'd be writing a lot more tests.
I think in your case too, because I watched you during co-working struggle through this for a couple of days, and I think it helped you understand your environment better, because like there were parts about it that I feel like you came away with a better understanding of how Firebase all connected together and worked and stuff. So that's good.
Yeah, it really does force you to like understand what's going on backwards and forwards. So yeah, that felt good. Cool. Last thing on FileInbox, in this vein of like I want to make 20K MRR in 50 more weeks. I'm trying to come up with ways that I can be consistently spending effort to be consistently getting customers. And I was talking with a friend about this, and they had the recommendation that feels so spooky that I just want to say it out loud and then hear what you have to say about it. The recommendation was I could call local businesses. Just like I look them up in Google, and I Google like accountants near me, and I just make a list, and I go from top to bottom, and I call them on the phone, and I say something along the lines of, "Hello, I am a local software developer. I'm in on this street just down the road from you. I have a weird request. I'd like to ask you a little bit about the software that you're using to receive files from your clients. Do you have 5 or 10 minutes to chat about that?" And then, not trying to sell them, but like honestly trying to understand what they're currently using and why they're currently using that, like doing a userless style interview. Spend 5 or 10 minutes just like chatting with them about it. And then at the end of the call, I'll be like, "Great. Are there any questions you have for me? Thank you very much. Goodbye." And if the conversation happens to go to a place where they say, oh, we're using Citrix ShareFile, but it sucks. And then I say, why does it suck? And they say, because blah, blah, blah. And I say, that's interesting that you would say that, because I actually am building a thing. That's the reason I'm talking to you about this. And it solves blah, blah, blah. And if not, I think, in the worst case, I think this would just get me a better idea of, for a specific focusing of a customer vertical, not a niching, but a focus, what their needs are and what they actually care about. This sounds so scary. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's scary, sure. Also, I think it sounds great. I think you should do it. Part of the reason it's scary, I think, for you is because you're like, well, one, cold calling people is scary. I have a fix for that later. I'll say that. But cold calling people is scary. You probably also think this is going to take a lot of time, and it probably really won't. You're probably afraid of rejection. You probably won't get as rejected as harshly as you think. Some other things, but so I've done a variant of this before, actually. So this was a long time ago when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and so I, instead of emailing, so this is the fix if emailing scares you, instead of calling, I cold emailed companies. I don't remember how I found them. I think I just found them local companies. And I basically said, I'm a local entrepreneur. I was emailing owners of small businesses. And so it really helps to connect them if you're like, I'm a small business owner too. And I just want to talk about, these two things. Do you have 5 or 10 minutes to talk? Now, you'll probably get a higher response rate cold calling, but just cold emailing. I think I emailed 10 businesses and talked to 5 people.
Really?
So so it's a huge, I was like, I have nothing. Well, this might be a little different for you. I was like, I have nothing to sell. I just want to understand this, and this. And they were really happy to talk to me. These are, small business people who it's probably a sacrifice for them to call me, but they seemed very interested, and they all followed up, and they so it was actually a really good experience. I recommend you do it.
This is starting to sound less scary. 50% response rate is really high. That's really
It was
good.
huge. I mean, it was because it was it was in my city, and I said I was a small business owner, and they were small business owners, and so it was a really high response rate.
Cool. Okay. You know what? I have friends who are accountants too. I could just call them. I could start with them.
Do that first. Yes.
Okay. I don't know why.
The other thing,
I think it's a fear of rejection. I think it's a fear of what do I think? I've always had a baseline anxiety calling people. I think my fear is they're going to be like, "What is this? Who are you? You can't be calling me."
So anyone under say 35.
Yeah.
I'm 36. So anyone under say 38 would say that. But most small business owners are 50. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're used to calling people. 20 years ago, no one had email. Everyone called each other all the time.
Yeah.
So they're used to that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I could call my own accountant. I haven't had this conversation with my accountant who I pay money. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
They get less scary the more you do them. So start warm. Start with friends. Start with your own accountant, and then it will be less scary to talk to the next one. Yeah.
You know what I feel like I need to do? There was a sales anecdote I heard one time where this may have been in Rich Dad Poor Dad or something, but someone on a sales team had a bowl of paperclips, and this was in the context of this person came into this company in their sales department, and over the course of a year became not just the top performer salesperson, but he outperformed every other salesperson combined, or some ridiculous numbers. And he was being interviewed, asked what is your secret? How are your numbers so good? And he was like, I use paperclips. And they were like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, I have 2 bowls on my desk. One of them is empty, and the other one has a bowl of 100 paperclips. And every day, I move the paperclips from one bowl to the other, and I can only move a paperclip after I've made a phone call, like an outreach or something. And that's how I was able to just because he was dialing so many people, even if it's a cold call and you're only getting a 1% response rate, okay, that's 1 a day. If I'm getting 1 more customer a day, over the course of a month, that's increasing MRR by what? Even if it's the lower plan, if it's $30 a month times 30, that's increasing MRR every month by $900. Over the course of the next 12 months, that's $10,800. That's 70% of the way there of where I need to go for to get it to 20k MRR in 12 months.
And if you use our SaaS math, then multiply by 12 and then multiply by 5, right? So it's
then it's
a half
ridiculous.
a million dollars in extra value.
Yeah, by making 100 calls a day, like I could do that in 2 hours. I don't know. Yeah, so that's the sort of thing that I want to be focused on. I feel like I'm really good at making software, and I feel like I'm pretty good at making software, and I feel like I'm pretty good at like helping people and being empathetic and like understanding problems. And I feel like where I really fall down is on the sales part of like finding people who have the problem and then selling my thing to them. And if I just maybe I think something that might work for me well is like reading books on sales, coming at it from the perspective of if I was merely focused on selling, how do I maximize that game? In the same way that I feel like Ali Abdal's part-time YouTuber Academy really honed my ability to like make videos and help people. I feel like I want to do that sort of thing, but for sales and really just think about it from a sales perspective. And then in the course of that context, they're going to be like, you're going to be selling someone else's thing and only working on commission. And so you got to really grind to make enough money. But the place I would be approaching that from is like, I just need to do enough sales for me. Like I'm capturing 100% of this thing. And salespeople, I think, would bump into a wall of not understanding the technical parts of the product very well. So if I can do that, I like by being pretty good at software and pretty good at helping people and pretty good at sales, I feel like I can combine those things to be really, really, really good at SaaS.
Yeah. I think part of the reason that this feels sort of icky for you and for me, so I'm bad at this too, is because, we hate being cold called. We hate being sold to. And so all of these things just feel really gross. What I found when I talk to people, well, I wasn't selling something, so it's a little different, but not only were they happy to talk to me and very interested, a lot of them thanked me afterwards. They said, your questions really made me think in more detail about what I was doing. Like more than one person said that, and they were going to change something in the business because of it. And like, so Patty 11, Patrick McKenzie, has this quote, which is something like, well, so first of all, you're not who you're selling to. If you cold call someone and they talk about their business to you, that's probably like the most exciting call of their day. Like everything else is like bills and like handling employee stuff. Yeah. And you're not, if your thing actually helps people, then it's a benefit to call them. And so a lot of the fear I think that I feel is like, am I going to be wasting this person's time? And I think you sort of have to trust that on the balance, you're actually not going to be wasting someone's time, even if you don't sell them anything, even if they don't, like it's just interesting for them to talk to you for both parties. And it actually may help them, even if you don't sell them anything, like you just talking to them. So yeah, I mean, just try it. Yeah.
I'm going to try it today. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to look up on Google Maps. I'm just going to accountant and I'm just going to call them and it's
I will
going to
ask
feel
you
bad.
next time how it went.
Good. Okay, good. Yeah. And it's like I've been through this so many times. It's going to be really hard at first and then it's going to get easy. And then I'll just be doing it by default. I'll do like 20 a day or something and it's going to feel like nothing. And I can hire Rachel to help me and do the work that she can do of like putting together a list of these things. She's been sort of spinning her wheels since the customer support email inbox has gotten back to zero. So if I can have some
which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't think we talked about that. That's exciting.
Did we not? It got to zero. Yes.
That's awesome.
2,000 emails in it, and she went all the way down to zero. And yeah, she's totally caught up with that. And that's just a thing I'm not thinking about now. Like when I'm going to Santorini next week, customer support will be taken care of, and that's a goal that I've had for so long that I've finally unlocked it. Oh, it feels so good. So yeah, if she can also be maintaining a list for me of like, Rachel, I need at least 20 people added to this list per day. Here's the criteria for adding them to the list. They can't be on the list already. They should be geographically close to me. They should be a business of one of these 3 types. I need their phone number and their email address, and I want you to send the email address. Well, maybe the email. I'll just call them for so just the phone number, but also have the email address just for fun. And then she can be feeding me, and then eventually, where I'd love to take this to is like having the confidence that that's a worthwhile enough thing to do that I could hire someone else to do it. If I could justify hiring a salesperson to be doing that, like I need to be doing it at first to define the process and understand how it works and like be getting the business insight from it. And if I can turn that into a process of like, here's the script of the things that you say to the person, and the questions ask them to validate them, and the thing that you do to sell them on it, and then you get this commission afterwards. That's, I feel like, where things get fun, because then I can just say like, wow, Rachel, I'm going to have way more of your hours so that you can do the same process, but in these 10 other cities, and filling up these 10 other lists. And then I hired 10 salespeople to do what I was doing. When everything's on Firebase and customer support is also handled not by me in a scalable way, like, I feel like that's when business starts to get fun. And that's where I want to go. I want to scale this up.
So yes, definitely do at least one. How many do you want to do today? One,
I want
3,
to
5?
do one today. I feel like one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to call one person today.
So do
How about
one.
I want to talk to one person today.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to talk to one person. I'm going to keep calling people until I talk to one person today.
Great. Okay.
Great.
So do that.
Good.
And I will ask you about that tomorrow.
Wonderful.
And then after you do that, so don't do this before, but after you do that, to get excited about doing stuff like this, Stelly FD from close.com, used to be close.io, he has given lots of conference talks, and they are all like, he's super peppy and has high energy, and he makes you excited about things you're scared about with sales. That's how I would describe him, his speaking style. So yes, after you talk to at least one person, go YouTubing for Stelly FD. Any of his conference talks are great.
Cool.
Yep.
He was at the very first MicroConf that I went to, and I got to talk to him, and I emailed him to be on my advisor list, and then I sent like 2 advisor update emails, and then never sent any after that. Stelly's a cool guy. I cut together. He's a very enthusiastic guy, and he makes prolific use of profanity. And I took a conference talk he did one time, and I did a supercut of just the profanity he used. And it was like a half-hour conference talk, and it was like a 45-second clip of him, like just speaking. It was really funny. But yeah, like I feel like that's a really good embodiment of the thing that I want to be better at. Like, he's really good at selling. He's really good at taking a thing and like unabashedly saying like, you need this thing. This thing would help you. And yeah, it has flaws, but who cares? Like, it's going to help you. Buy it. And that's a mentality that I'd like to be further embodying. Cool. Last section from me. Totally switching gears in a unproductive direction based on what we just talked about. Well, no, because it's still like this can be. I can have hobbies and things that I'm doing on the side. That sure. I have 2 things I want your hot takes on. The first is something that we have talked about before that you said was a good idea. A finance tracker to render your expenses in tree maps. We talked about it previously as a QuickBooks integration. Sarah and I are going through Financial Peace University by Dave Ramsey, and one of the first modules talks about putting together a budget as a couple, and they have the recommended app that they made to do your budget. And 5 minutes into entering my information in the app, I was like, this is dumb. I want to make my own app. Oh, actually, this sort of ties into the personal finance tracker, the finance tracker thing that I was going to do on QuickBooks. Where Did My Money Go? App is the working title for this thing. And I think I just want to bounce off of you. Like, I'm seeing the same use case potentially useful for 2 very different audiences. The audience that we talked about before was people on QuickBooks, and that would look like a QuickBooks integration that then slurps in all your QuickBooks stuff, which is pre-categorized. And I'm just rendering this graph for you of being able to see your expenses, like the size of them is how big the expense is. And then you can see subcategories, like how big is the subcategory. A tree map is the name of that sort of graph. The way that I want to use this is in personal finance, to be able to see how much money did we spend as a couple last month and where was that money spent. So I can see this big box of like, wow, each individual time we ate out didn't feel like that much, but actually looking at this as a whole, this box is like the biggest box. This box is as big as rent. So if we're trying to reduce our expenses in the same way that you use a tree map really effectively to like find files on your hard drive that are eating up your hard drive space, that can either be in single big expenses or a bunch of tiny expenses that are in the same category. That sort of graph would then help me narrow down and be able to see where to cut back expenses. And two small things I want to say to flesh this idea out a little bit better. I didn't realize it seems reasonably straightforward to plug into bank accounts and be able to get bank transaction data through Stripe. Just announced that they're going to support being able to do this, and then a company called Plaid, as long as I write some documents that say like I don't share my password with anyone, and I all of my employees like keep virus protection software on their laptops or something, they will give me API access to then be able to authenticate to other people's bank accounts, to be able to pull in transaction data and then generate this graph. So that's the first thing, is like technically it's pretty cool. And then the second thing I was going to say has completely lost contact with my brain, so I don't remember what that was. But what's your hot take on pivoting this? Well, I don't know. I think it's a much better product if it's for QuickBooks, and it's a cool technical problem and would benefit me and Sarah directly if I'm using budgeting in this way. How would you be thinking about that as a project?
Yeah. Okay. So a few things. One, doing it for yourself, I think, is awesome. You'll probably get a much better understanding of your finances and everything if you do it for yourself. So great. Do whatever you want to do it for yourself. That's fine. If you want to do it and just put it out there for the world, then I guess do whatever you want is what I was going to say. Like, do a personal tracker. That's fine. But if you actually want to make money, what I would do first is, so this is another conference talk homework for you. Go watch the person who built You Need a Budget. YNAB did a microconf talk, and go listen to how difficult it was to get a personal budget tracker off the ground. And then don't do anything consumer to, their business to consumer. Like, don't do a personal one. If you actually want to make money, there are actually now two options. So the first is the QuickBooks things, which we talked about before. The second is what you mentioned. So Stripe released basically a Plaid competitor. I've used Plaid before, and it's really finicky and difficult. I would avoid them unless they got a lot better in the last few years.
Okay.
But Stripe just released something, and Stripe also just released a marketplace. Have you seen it?
Yes. No.
Yes. Stripe now has an app directory. I don't think they're calling it a marketplace.
Okay.
So I would look very carefully at Stripe's API for connecting to bank accounts, and at their new marketplace, or app directory, whatever they're calling it.
Interesting. Yeah, especially if Plaid's API is finicky and Stripe's API is like a brand new thing. This could be I could potentially be riding the wave of it being a new app store app. That would still, I think, be B2C though, and I agree that B2C is not the way to go with this.
I don't know. I mean, businesses use Stripe, so there's lots of businesses that connect their bank accounts.
Yeah. I think if you're categorizing expenses though, like, I could plug directly into your bank account, but then you'd have to like recategorize it in my thing and categorize it in QuickBooks, and I think most people are using something like QuickBooks.
The other thing I say is this is a giant distraction from FileInbox, and so
of course. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know the OneUp creator did a conference talk. I'd like to watch that.
Yeah, I would watch that one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think my takeaway from this is I just need to pull it back to like what do I need, and what I need is like I need to parse these 4 CSVs from our bank accounts, and then that's my source of data, and then I just manually go through that once a month or something.
So if you watch the YNAB talk, he talks about like his first thing was an Excel spreadsheet that he just sold as an Excel spreadsheet. So if what you have at the end of this is like a script which will take Chase Bank's CSV and parse it and turn it into a nice visualization, sell that on Gumroad for $25 and see if anybody buys it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and in the worst case, like, this can just be a thing that I share with friends that, like, show me what the CSV looks like when you export it from your bank. Let me write a script real quick to change the column names. Great. You drag and drop that CSV once a month into this thing, and that'll generate this graph for you. Yeah, okay. I think that makes a lot more sense. Thank you for the clarity. I have a second distraction from FileInbox.
All right.
That's also something we've talked about before. NFTs have crashed. There's the famous case of like the first NFT, the NFT that was the first tweet from Jack Dorsey on Twitter, sold initially for some hundreds of millions of dollars, and I think it was
$2.5 million, I think, something like that. But
yeah, like it drastically crashed in value. Also, like, just the concept of JPEGs as art things, and it just seems really silly to me. Even like the integration that Twitter did with OpenSea to be able to have an NFT in your profile picture. Like, you can
Oh,
just
right.
mint a new NFT with that exact image, and unless someone's really digging to see like, but who minted this NFT, like it looks identical. So I think that's kind of silly.
You can also just set your thing to a hexagon.
Yes, I've seen several people do that, and then have, when you click on it, it's a square image with white in the background in the hexagon, and then the one that I clicked on at the bottom had in really light text, like low contrast, "This is dumb."
Yeah.
And I agree. Yeah, the image thing doesn't make sense, I don't think. And I found myself coming back to this idea this last week of buying NFTs of blog posts. So here's my pitch of this product. I'm selling this to blog owners of popular blogs. So it would be like Mr. Money Mustache or like XKCD, and I say, hey, you know that whole NFT thing? Dumb, right? But I'm trying a new angle on it, where you can sell an NFT of your blog posts. And the metadata that you're selling that's unique is the URL of the blog post. And the only thing you need to do as an integration to this is paste this line of JavaScript into your page at the point where you want to show the current owner of the current page, or a link to be able to buy the NFT of that page. And then you need to set this DNS record that has your Ethereum address of where you want your money to go to when people buy it. And that's it. And then money will just start going in. And there's like, I think this is Wild West enough that I don't need to worry about like buying and selling taxes or whatever else. Like, I think because it's all in Ethereum, it's okay. And I would make money from this just taking cut of the Ethereum. That would get real fuzzy if this got big, but like as a hacker side project, I think it would be okay for now. The experience then when you're a user of the site is you go to the blog post, you see, I've linked people to this blog post 6 times, and this is very important for me in my life. What's this? I can buy the NFT of this page, and it shows up in this box. That's cool. Let me click that. You get linked to OpenSea or whatever the market account is. You transfer a certain number of Ethereum into it, and now your name is listed as the owner of that page. That's sort of this, like, it's not quite advertising space, and it's not that you own rights to it. It's just like you've bought this ephemeral idea of ownership of this thing, and anyone can go to this page and see that you are the owner of it. This solves a few of the problems of NFTs of like, you know that it's legit because it's on the person's page. It's not like these pictures of monkeys where it's just a picture of the monkey and anyone can have the picture of the monkey. It's like, okay, well, there's uniqueness in the URL that like everyone is going to this page, and on this page I am listed as the owner. That feels much more valuable. And then if I think other people would find it valuable too, I would put a lot more money into it as sort of an investment of like, I found out about this blogger when they were small, and I bought a whole bunch of their pages, and I've sold several of them for more than I bought them for. So there's this like secondary market effect. What's your take on this? Recognizing that this is a distraction, and I shouldn't be working on it.
Yeah. So I actually like this idea, not because I think it's a good idea. It might be. I don't know. But because if you're interested in the Web3 space at all, now is actually a pretty cheap time to get into it because gas fees have come way down from what I understand. It's way cheaper to do things. Also because if you actually create something, it's probably going to be crazy hard to get people to buy into it right now.
Yeah.
But if and when crypto goes crazy again, you will be ready to capitalize on that. And all it would take is 1 or 2 big blogs to do this to get a real, like knock-on effect. Like, because, your link will be in the JavaScript widget or whatever.
Yep.
So yeah, I like this as a learning exercise in the Web3 space, as inexpensive compared to what it used to be. And maybe it's a good idea, maybe not, I don't know. But, but it sounds neat enough to work on a little bit. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I like that framing. This is also like, this solves a problem we were talking about several dozen episodes ago of like what my Web3 project is to try to learn the space. I think initially I was thinking like a gambling site, and that's a terrible idea.
It sounds great. The thing I was going to say is, first of all, taxes shouldn't be an issue because from my understanding, money will be transferred from the buyer to the seller, and then some will come to you. And so you don't actually touch the bulk of the money. That's my understanding. But
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, my trepidation in this is like, if I was doing all of this, but with like, the idea would still work with USD on Stripe.
Sure.
And if I was doing it that way, that money would need to be reported to the IRS as income and all that other stuff.
Then if you're using Stripe, I use Stripe Connect, because then Stripe handles all that, and it's the same thing. The bulk of the money transfers directly, and you just get a cut.
Stripe, I think Stripe no longer supports crypto.
Oh, I thought you meant Stripe with USD.
If I was doing it in USD, yeah, then I
Yeah,
would need to pay
yeah,
taxes on it. But I think if it's in
Right.
Ethereum, it just feels weird. I don't know if I was doing exactly the same thing but
Right.
in Ethereum, it feels like the tax situation is fuzzier.
I see what you're saying. Something to figure out in your discovery.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was going to say is make sure the one thing that you want to get right is whatever contract actually happens, like
Yep.
legal contract. So there was some weird thing recently where someone, Seth Green or something, was going to use an NFT he bought in a show, but then someone stole it from him and now he doesn't have the rights to it or something. Anyway, rights for using something. If I was a like XKCD, for example, and I wanted to sell my pages as NFTs, I want to make sure I still own everything on that page. You buy this NFT, you do not own it. I own it. You have the right to say you're the owner of this page, even though you don't actually own it or something. Like whatever actual contract gets signed, because there's still a legal contract, even though it's all on the blockchain. And so make sure that the legal verbiage actually is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But other than that,
Yeah, that'd be
sounds
bad
like-
if someone bought it and had a different idea of like, and then like
then
the blog
there's
owner
some
doesn't realize that they just sold like the publishing rights to all their blog posts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I want to make that clear that like the only thing you're buying is saying that you're the owner in this box and you get nothing
Right.
else. Okay.
But other than that confusion, sounds like a neat project. So yeah.
Cool. Another advantage of it is gas fees kind of don't matter for it because the NFT doesn't get minted until a person says they want to buy it. So like the
Right.
person buying it is paying the initial gas fees, which is a trick I learned from the NFT space. Cool. Yeah, I like the framing of just like this is a fun project to learn about Web3. So this is an option of a project I can work on in the time that I'm not doing my main FileInbox stuff. Cool. Thank you very much, Chris. That's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I'll see you next week. Goodbye.